Any MMO that never quite broke into the level of being one of the popular ones you wish had done. Honestly, Dungeons & Dragons Online. Not Neverwinter. This is Neverwinter. DDO. I think DDO has a lot of really interesting systems that would appeal to a lot of people had it been more popular. So, DDO, or Dungeons & Dragons Online, is another Dungeons & Dragons MMORPG. But it's really interesting because in DDO, you make your own character. It's much more complicated than this. You go through adventures, and when you get to maximum level, you retire your character. You ascend them, which means you basically permanently destroy the character. But every time you ascend, you make a new character, start from level 1 again, but you get tiny, tiny, tiny stacking bonuses every time you've ascended. So it's almost like prestiging in Call of Duty. But what that means is there are people who get to the end of the game, finish everything, get cool items, restart having ascended and prestiged, but that means that the developers can keep adding content for every level. So the developers can say, hey, there's a new level 5 quest. Hey, there's a new level 7 quest. Hey, there's a new beginner zone, which is super cool because it means that everyone can keep benefiting from content added all along. I like that a lot. It means that it always stays relevant. Plus, every quest is voiced. There's a load of really cool areas. There's non-combat skills that matter. It's fun. It just never broke into the mainstream, which I think is a shame. I'm talking about Dungeons & Dragons Online. There's loads of cool stuff in it. Loads of cool stuff. In fact, almost every MMO I've played has great systems. It's just a shame that sometimes they don't quite break in. Like Lord of the Rings Online. Great game. Never quite broke into the mainstream, did it? Never quite made it. I would say that, yeah, these kind of games, they're the games that find their audience and then never really do much beyond that. DDO last year updated all servers to 64-bit. Good. Now, I think my issue with Lord of the Rings and DDO wasn't there an issue where you couldn't change the scale of the UI because the UI was actually pre-drawn and not a vector? I'm sure there was an issue with the UI somewhere. So I think DDO has a couple of good systems. I would have loved Neverwinter to have not done what it did at Mod 16, which has really changed how the game feels. We were speaking about this earlier. How do you keep adding new content? Is there a way to add content to a game without invalidating the old content? And I think there are two ways to do this. One of them is you don't add any new power. You just add new gameplay experiences, new bosses, new items, new weapons and new armor that aren't necessarily better. Or you add items that can become better, provided you have then retroactively added a reason to go back and do the old content. Like, imagine this. Imagine you've got like 10 dungeons in your base game, and then you bring out an expansion pack, and in the expansion pack there's a super mega ultra difficult dungeon at the very end that drops a cool helmet. And the helmet's pretty good, but it's not better than any of the helmets in the base game. But then you add in a system where if you go back and do the base dungeon, when you get to the very end of that dungeon, you can kill the boss there and then pray to an altar at the end of the dungeon, which adds a small buff to the helmet. And once you've added all 10 buffs to the helmet, you then need to go back and do the new dungeon again with a fully buffed up helmet, which permanently upgrades it to a better helmet, which is slightly better than the best in the game before. What you're doing then is you're adding a load of reasons to go back and do stuff. I like there to be reasons to do old stuff. If you're going to add new stuff, that's fine, but make it a reason to do old stuff. It's helmets all the way down. I mean, look at the fact that RuneScape has gear that's still relevant. The Barrows armor in RuneScape. When was Barrows released? Because Barrows armor is still relevant. God Wars 1 armor is still relevant in old school RuneScape. It's not the best anymore, but it's still relevant. Barrows was released in 2005. That is a 21-year-old bit of content that is still relevant. Can you imagine that? That's insane. Content was released for an MMORPG 21 years ago, and it is still a worthwhile piece of content. An expansion should absolutely not invalidate large aspects of your previous game. Every area should have a reason. Every item can have a reason. My friend said you bullied him in middle school. Tell him he's a nerd. What about expansion-specific progression? Gear that's better or worse, but gear that is different. So, that's been done before. And sometimes it can be done quite well. I mean, Neverwinter did it with... What the hell? There was a dinosaur expansion, the Jungles of Chult. And the Jungles of Chult had gear that did more damage against dinosaurs, but wasn't necessarily better against anything else. So you can absolutely, when designing a game, you can design content that is good for this specific bit. Situational content. And there's nothing wrong with situational content. I'm not talking borrowed power, that's different. We're not talking temporary power, we're talking stuff that still remains important. Like, imagine if you had a dungeon and the first boss was a dinosaur and the second boss was a vampire and the third boss was some kind of demon. And then you had 3 campaigns in your game that each had their own narrative storyline that rewarded stuff that was good against dinosaurs, vampires, and demons for each campaign. You're then giving a reason to bring people from all of those campaigns together. I think mechanics should be stacked on top of each other, and aspects of the game should be made relevant in combination. I remember all those things. To me, that's the important part of it. Stacking. You like the idea of upcrafting, take an old piece of gear and make it relevant again by giving it to the new content standards. Absolutely. Absolutely. When a new piece of content is added to the game, I would rather it make old content better, not old content worse. Consider that. If you get to add a new dungeon, a new boss, a new weapon, a new area, do you want everything that came before it to be less useful or more useful? Do I feel Neverwinter is populated nowadays? I feel there are more people in this stream than are playing the game. So, definitely not. I'll tell you what though, we have blitzed through this. It's almost a shame because I have great memories of this game, but MZ, who is playing right now, she can't play through my memories. And that's what I often try and tell people. New players cannot play through your memories. No matter how much you liked something, if it isn't good now, it's not going to be good for them. And so as much as I would love to say, oh, you're going to play this, you're going to love it, it's a real shame that when you step back and judge something as it is right now, it often doesn't hold up to what you remember it being. I really hope that when we can finally do the first skirmish event, it's difficult. Because if it isn't difficult, this hasn't really been a game so much as a walking simulator with some buttons. Playing this in 2013 was an absolute blast. I will maintain modules 1 to 5 were peak. Sharandar and the Dread Ring were incredible expansions with amazing boss fights and just great progression. I would say that modules 5 to 10 were fine, and I think 10 to 16, they were still good, but they didn't quite hit the high levels. Beyond 16, that's when I kind of really lost interest. That's when they renamed the classes. They renamed them from what they were originally called, like the Hunter Ranger just became the Ranger, the Trickster Rogue just became the Rogue, the Great Weapon Fighter just became the Barbarian. Those first few modules, God, they were top tier action combat. They were terror levels of action combat. Every game is a button pushing simulator, but this one feels like it has no stakes, which is different. Like, the Wizard was originally just called the Control Wizard, because the whole point was just moving enemies around the battlefield. I think it had more character. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm going to keep saying that it's fun now, because it is, at least to me. Control Wizard was awesome, truly was. I am hoping that once we get to the actual difficult combat, we're able to have a bit of a challenge. From what I can tell, I think that this game has been balanced around the end game. I mean, it's got to have been balanced around the end game, because there's no way that it's balanced around this bit. It gets much harder. Good! Because right now it's insultingly easy. Josh, I forgot how to kill the last boss of Metroid Zero. Can you play through my memories? I can try. Not going to be good at it. In fact, the current leveling set you are doing is technically the tutorial. That's terrible pacing. We are 4.5 hours in. No tutorial should be 4.5 hours long. I don't think this should count as the tutorial anymore. Even if it is the tutorial, it should be more difficult. Although I will maintain modules 1 to 5. Peak difficulty. When does it get difficult? Anyone that plays this game a lot, when does it get hard? Next year. Once you've got to the very end game and can't do anything, that's when it gets harder. Once you hit max level 20, then you can do what you want. That terrible pacing. Absolutely terrible pacing. A game should not begin at max level. A game should begin as soon as you start playing it. The tutorial should be part of the enjoyable playable experience. A good game's tutorial is just a fun level. I think at level 15 or 16 we should definitely have something to do. If not, I can see why this game struggles to keep players. Why on earth would you take a player and say, hey, play this, it's boring for the first 8 hours, but then it gets kind of good? What a terrible pacing. The leveling should not be work. The leveling is part of the game. If it's part of the game, it should be well designed. If it isn't well designed, why is it not well designed? The thing is, I don't think the foundation here is bad. I think there's a great deal of potential. I think that MMORPGs should have multiplayer. That was the whole sentence. I was going to say more words, but you know what? No, we can just stop the sentence there. MMOs should have multiplayer. That is my design idea. Companies should hire me to consult for them. They should. Based. Fully based. MMORPGs should have multiplayer moments and abilities and dungeons and focuses from the moment you download them. You should literally be able to start the game. Yes, we're doing the Throne of Idris. Yeah, my favorite dungeon. Actually happy we get to do this. It's not going to be difficult, but my god, it's going to be fun. Should I be excited? No, it's not going to be difficult. It's a good dungeon. It's a well-designed, interesting, nice, fun dungeon with a fun final boss. But I don't think it's going to be a challenge. Like, part of the fun is overcoming the challenge. But there's no challenge here. If this game makes you one-shot everything, it gets old real fast. Throne of Idris used to be... So one thing that Neverwinter used to do back in, again, mod 1 to 5, and I loved this, you could queue up for the dungeon using the dungeon queue finder. However, if you wanted to do the epic difficulty version of the dungeon, you had to actually physically travel to wherever the entrance to the dungeon was. And I really liked that. So, like normal players that just wanted to do the normal version, the queue finder, the party finder's there for you. But once you got a team of 5 players and they were like, right, we're taking on the real difficult version, everyone then meets up in Protector's Enclave, leaves, and travels to the entrance of the actual dungeon. It keeps the world relevant. And I loved the fact it did that. MZ has even just said, even as an MMO newbie, this is too easy. Like, MZ's, the only other MMO she's played is World of Warcraft. And I said, hey, as a combat game, try Neverwinter. And if a brand new player is looking at your game and saying, this is kind of easy, you got to change it, man. Maybe we should let MZ solo this. Ooh, now this I remember. Oh, the combat's fun. Yeah, the combat is fun. It's just the rest of it sucks. Throne of Idris is an excellently designed dungeon that's going to be way too easy for us. This is a shame. This almost, don't get me wrong, this is bittersweet. I've not been to these virtual halls in 15 years now. But this is almost like coming back to your childhood home and realizing it's been turned into a really cheap rental flat. Looking around and thinking, I remember what it used to be. The memories. All right, MZ, kill a dire helm by yourself if you can. I'm going to dodge out of the way. This is... You can do this. Just do a single arcane singularity. There is no way that a wizard should be able to solo 2 dire helms. And yet... Oh, the aesthetics are great. Don't get me wrong, the aesthetics are gorgeous of this game. Well done. Dire helms are meant to be scary. Portable altars, goddamn. This is only easy because the fact that we're currently on mod 33, or we're getting mod 33, means that we've gone through so much power creep. Yeah, that bone golem used to be a mini-boss. Now, Now it's an embarrassment. 50,000 people used to raid here. Now it's a ghost town. I suspect there is a deliberate component to how easy this is. If there is, it's stupid. If there is, it's not working because the player base is dying out. I'm not saying the game is dead, I'm saying the player base is absolutely way lower than it could be. If any semi-competent gamer played 4 or 5 hours like we've done today and felt no challenge, there's no way that person's coming back. I don't think an MMORPG that prides itself on trying to get a player base who are literally too incompetent to complete its basic dungeons is going to survive. There is a difference between a game having hard gameplay and being hard to play. I think that all games should have a level of hard gameplay, but I think they should also be easy to play in respect to you should know what the controls do, you should know how to interact with it, you should know what the game expects from you. The challenge in the game should be overcoming the difficulty within the gameplay, not working out how the hell the game works. Yeah, everyone just leaves because it's too easy. See, what we've got to now is we've reached a point where, I remember this used to be an optional room actually. There we go. I think we've reached a point where any puzzle in a game, and when I say puzzle, I also mean combat encounter, because to me a combat encounter is a type of puzzle. Any puzzle in a game has 2 ways to be overcome. One of them is player skill, and the other is mechanical advantage. And in a good game, both of those things are needed. Player skill is knowing what to press when and what to do to not die or lose, and mechanical advantage is the items you're using, the weapons, the armor. Now normally, mechanical advantage can mitigate a lack of player skill. If you're going to get hit more because you're not moving out the way enough, just wear better armor. But also, player skill should be able to overcome a lack of mechanical advantage. If you don't have the highest hitting weapon, then if you play well enough and avoid the damage long enough and keep the fight going on long enough, you should be able to win even with that weaker weapon. That's the balance between player skill and mechanical advantage. What I think Neverwinter has shown us is that this is a game that has lent so heavily into giving the player mechanical advantage that player skill has been completely eradicated. Can I get rid of the ad? I can, but in order to do that, I've got to turn off the thing. Hang on. HUD, mission thingy, hide. Cool. I've got such a mechanical advantage in this that my skill is irrelevant. It's also the mission tracker, yes. Yeah, Vulture, it's annoying, isn't it? Because that means in order to track the mission, you have to actively engage with an advert. Stupid. We spoke about the Foundry earlier and about why the Foundry had to be removed. 2 main reasons. 1, players were making exploitative maps that simply gave a ton of experience and gold and then grinding them for advantage. And 2, nobody really works there anymore that knows how it works. So it's built up a huge amount of what they call tech debt. I am tempted to see if we can run these just with older weapons and older armor. You still prefer to Guild Wars 2 combat questing? Absolutely, yeah. Guild Wars 2 is great. So, MZ hasn't got a huge amount of experience with lots of MMORPGs, and she started with World of Warcraft Classic as a recommendation, and she currently has 2 other games downloaded. One is Neverwinter, and the other is, I think she'll probably like this MMO, because I know how much she likes fashion, Final Fantasy XIV. Yeah. I think Final Fantasy XIV is going to be her thing. Especially because you know how much she likes fashion. Do I think Neverwinter Nights could have been the dominant MMO in a world without WoW? Do you mean Neverwinter Nights or this Neverwinter specifically? Because Neverwinter Nights would have been the RPG. Ooh. If it's just Neverwinter, then honestly, no. And the reason I say no is because this simply does not appeal to enough people. Now, an MMO doesn't need to appeal to everyone. It just needs to appeal to whatever its player base needs to be. This appeals to people that want fast-paced action combat. The reason it doesn't do that anymore is because there's no point in the combat being fast-paced and action-packed if death means nothing. Here we go, the Dire Forge. This was the mini-boss before Idris. Yeah, what's the point in having fast-paced action combat if the combat doesn't last long enough to be, you know, fun? MZ says, fun fact, you've not died once yet in this game. Yeah, I know, I think you should have as well. Because right now we feel like demigods instead of adventurers. If we stood still and tripped every trap, and potentially if we'd have to try to die. How would I compare this to Dungeons & Dragons Online? This is an action game. DDO is an RPG. I understand that doing something fast-paced does indeed make it faster, but I think it's a shame that right now I don't feel that my reactions matter. Like, I could just walk in and melee everything, even as a ranger, and I don't think I'd die. You know what? I might need to take that back. Like, I've definitely taken some damage. Right, a third of my health was taken off. Okay, so don't go and melee everything. There is a reason why I'm able to talk to you guys so much while I'm doing this. Yeah, straight up. DDO traps can one-shot, that's true. Destroy the forge shards, and now we turn on the forge. God, I remember this was a mini-boss. This was a mini-boss and a half when he came out. I just think it's a shame that we're blitzing through the content so quickly. When it doesn't feel like it has any value, any weight to it, you know? This is why I would suggest Dungeons & Dragons. I think Dungeons & Dragons Online is a better role-play game. But I think this is a more fun combat experience. Quinn says, yes, the lever that makes the forge explode. Conveniently located directly in front of the forge. Okay, so this was the boss. Good luck. This is Idris. She used to be scary. You used to have to fight your way up each of these steps slowly. Nothing hurts until endgame. That's dumb. That's such bad pacing. I'm not going to convince anyone to play this. Right, this is embarrassingly easy. What the hell? Ice Knife is wildly overpowered. What just... Hang on. Combat. Can we just have a quick check of that? Okay, combat. Who... Can we see who did damage to Idris? No. No, we can't. That was crazy powerful. However much damage MZ just did. Well, now I'm sad. Your dog dealt 21,000 damage. Yeah, don't look too much into the numbers. Alright, nothing else is new there, which is fine. Your health regen gives you 18,000 hit points. I see. Blink and you will miss the boss dying. That's true. Is this game still around? Yes. Is it any good? Kind of. I like the aesthetics, I like the design, I like the vibe. I am discovering more and more that I straight up do not like the fact that it is really, really, really easy. Like insultingly easy. Like dull. Boringly easy. You should not say, oh, the game gets good 8 hours in. The campfire mechanics are also useless, because they used to heal your injuries and give you health back, and potions used to be needed. I've not had to drink a single potion. Instantly heals 90,000 hit points. I currently have... How many hit points have I got? Right now, can I... 128,000 hit points.